Willpower begins where purpose lives. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned is that when you know why you're doing something, the how gets easier. People often ask, Jim, how do I stay motivated? How do I stay on track when I'm tired? Or when things get tough? And the answer, my friend, is simple. You need a reason. Not just any reason. You need a reason that touches your heart. A reason that gets you out of bed before the alarm clock rings. A reason so strong that it pushes back when resistance starts pushing in. You see, most people think willpower is about force, about grinding through, about sheer determination. And while that might work for a little while, it doesn't last. Willpower without purpose fades quickly. It burns out like a cheap candle on a windy night. But willpower backed by purpose, that's a furnace. That's a fire that doesn't go out just because the wind picked up. That kind of willpower can last a lifetime. Think about it. When a mother sees her child in danger, does she need to find motivation to act? No. She acts instantly. Purpose drives her. That's what you and I need. Not another productivity hack or trick to stay focused. We need a purpose that grabs us by the soul and says, this is why you're here. Purpose gives context to sacrifice. It makes struggle feel worthwhile. When you know what you're aiming for and why it matters, you stop seeing hard work as punishment. You start seeing it as part of the process. You start thinking, of course this is difficult, but it's worth it. And worth is everything. If something means enough to you, you'll find a way to make it happen. And if it doesn't, you'll find an excuse. That's human nature. Now, don't think purpose needs to be some huge, world-changing idea. It doesn't have to be a mission to cure disease or end poverty. It might be something simpler. Maybe your purpose is to show your children what's possible. Maybe it's to break a cycle of poverty or laziness or excuses that have plagued your family for generations. Maybe it's to live a life you don't need a vacation from. Whatever it is, it just needs to matter to you. When you find that reason, something changes. You stop negotiating with yourself in the morning. You stop debating whether you feel like it. You stop needing inspiration every 5 minutes. Purpose eliminates a lot of that inner conflict. Because once you know your purpose, you can anchor your willpower to it. And every time you feel weak, you don't reach for a cup of coffee. You remind yourself of your why. And suddenly the strength returns. I remember one of the first times I discovered this truth in my own life. I was broke. I was 25, had pennies in the bank, and all I had to show for my work was a pile of bills and a few good intentions. But then I met a mentor who asked me a question that changed my life. He said, Jim, who depends on you becoming better? I had never thought about it that way. I was too focused on myself. But when I realized that my choices would impact not just me, but my future family, my community, the people who would someday look to me for leadership, it changed everything. That question gave me a reason. And once I had a reason, willpower showed up. So here's the truth. If you want to cultivate unstoppable willpower, don't start with discipline. Start with purpose. Don't ask, how do I stay motivated? Ask, what would make giving up not an option? Find the answer to that question, and you'll find energy you didn't know you had. You'll find patience. You'll find courage. You'll find grit. And above all, you'll find that willpower was never about superhuman strength. It was about having a reason strong enough to keep going when everyone else quits. So take the time to write it down, reflect on it, revisit it often. Your reason is the root. Water it, nourish it, protect it. Because from that root grows a tree that can weather any storm. And that, my friend, is how you begin the journey toward unstoppable willpower. Discipline is not something you stumble upon. It's not a talent you're born with or a gift passed down from your parents. Discipline is a decision, a daily decision, and not just once, but over and over again, every day. You wake up and you make the choice. Do I do what I should, or do I do what's easy? And let me tell you, the people who build unstoppable willpower aren't the ones who always feel like doing the hard thing. They're just the ones who do it anyway. You see, there's this idea that some people are just naturally disciplined, that they have some inner strength you weren't given. But that's a lie. The truth is, discipline is like a muscle. It grows when you use it. It weakens when you don't. And just like with your body, you don't start by lifting the heaviest weight in the gym. You start with what you can handle. You start small, and you build from there. Most people get stuck because they try to change everything overnight. They get inspired. They set huge goals. They change their routine, their diet, their schedule, and within a week they're burned out. Why? Because they skipped the most important step, building the habit of discipline through small, consistent action. Willpower that lasts is never built in a burst. It's built one decision at a time, one promise kept, one task completed when it would have been easier to delay. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even if it's small, you're sending yourself a message. You're telling your brain, I am someone who follows through, and that message sticks. It changes how you see yourself. And once your identity begins to shift, everything else becomes easy. You're no longer someone who tries to be disciplined. You're someone who is. That identity built day by day becomes your foundation. Let me give you a simple example. Say you want to get healthier. You don't need to run 5 miles on day one. You don't even need to join a gym. What you need is to decide, I walk for 10 minutes every day, no matter what, rain or shine, tired or energized, 10 minutes. That's it. But you do it without fail. And what happens? Your brain starts to take notice. You start to believe, if I say I'll do something, I'll do. That belief is the seed of discipline. And when watered daily, it grows into something powerful. Now don't get me wrong. This isn't always easy. You're going to have days where you don't feel like it. You're going to be tempted to make excuses. And that's where the real opportunity lies. Because discipline isn't built when things are going well. It's built in the tough moments. It's built when you choose to keep your word. Despite discomfort, it's built when you push through, even when no one is watching. That's where the muscle grows. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the ability to keep commitments to yourself, not to other people, to yourself. Because if you can trust yourself, you don't need anyone else to push you. You become self-directed, and self-direction is where freedom begins. When you no longer rely on moods or motivation to act, you gain control over your time, your habits, and eventually your results. Think about how much easier life becomes when you're not constantly in conflict with yourself. When you don't need to have long debates in your head about what to do. When you've decided in advance what your standards are. That's what discipline does. It removes decision fatigue. You don't waste energy deciding if you'll do the thing. You've already decided. All that's left is to act. I've often said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And that bridge is built one brick at a time. Some days the brick is small. Some days it's heavy. But every brick matters. And over time, that bridge becomes sturdy enough to carry the weight of your biggest dream. So tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off, you'll have a choice. Do I hit snooze or do I keep my promise? Do I wait for motivation or do I act on my commitment? Choose wisely, because every choice you make is either building your willpower or weakening it. And when you make that daily decision with intention over and over again, you won't just have discipline, you'll become disciplined. And that, my friend, is the foundation of unstoppable willpower. Every single day, life hands us a quiet but powerful choice. Do we do what's easy, or do we do what's necessary? That choice might not shout at us, but it's always there. It shows up the moment the alarm clock rings. It shows up when it's time to make that difficult phone call. It shows up when it's time to eat clean, work late, study longer, or stand up for what's right. The easy way says later. The necessary way says now. And that's the crossroads where willpower is forged or forgotten. You see, most people drift through life doing what's easy, and who can blame them? The easy way is comfortable. It doesn't demand much. It feels safe. It gives us instant pleasure with no immediate pain. But over time, that ease turns into regret. That comfort turns into disappointment. Because what's easy now usually becomes hard later. And what's hard now often becomes easier later. That's the paradox most people miss. Willpower becomes unstoppable the moment you train yourself to consistently choose what's necessary over what's convenient. But this doesn't mean you have to be cold, robotic, or harsh. It means you build a relationship with responsibility. You start to value long-term fulfillment over short-term relief. You begin to live by the truth that what you want most must always come before what you want now. The reason most people struggle with willpower is not because they're weak. It's because they've practiced choosing easy for so long that they don't even recognize the necessary path anymore. They've trained their brain to flinch at discomfort, to run from challenge. But here's the good news. You can retrain that brain. You can rewire that response, and it starts with awareness. You start noticing in real time when the two paths appear. And then you start choosing the one that leads to growth, not relief. Let's say you've got a report due, or a business to build, or a workout you promised yourself you'd do. The easy choice says, just rest a little. You've earned it. The necessary choice says, yes, you're tired, but the work still matters. That moment, though small, is everything. That's where you either strengthen your resolve or erode it. It's not about being perfect every time. It's about building a pattern, a trend in your behavior that points in the direction of self-leadership. There's something empowering that happens when you repeatedly choose what must be done. You stop being controlled by your feelings. You start leading your life instead of reacting to it. Your self-esteem improves because deep down, you know you're doing what needs to be done. That feeling of knowing you did the right thing, even when it was hard, that's the root of real confidence. Not the fake kind you post online. The real kind that lives quietly inside you and shows up when it's needed most. When you choose what's necessary, even in small things, you build mental toughness. And toughness isn't about being hard or unfeeling. It's about being committed. It's about doing the thing, even when you're uninspired, unmotivated, or uncertain. Willpower grows when you push back against the temptation to quit, to delay, or to escape. Each of those moments is like a rep in the mental gym. And just like with physical training, the more reps you do, the stronger you become. But don't expect applause. Choosing the necessary path won't win you popularity. It won't always make sense to other people. They might even criticize you for working late, for passing up the party, for saying no to the donut. But here's the truth. Those same people will someday ask you how you did it, how you stayed strong, how you stayed focused. And you'll know the answer. It wasn't magic. It was a series of choices. It was choosing what mattered over what was easy. Again and again, until the hard things became your normal. That's the secret of unstoppable willpower. It's not a one-time burst. It's a daily, deliberate decision to walk the road less traveled, to pay the price up front so you can enjoy the reward later, to act in service of your future self instead of catering to your present comfort. When you make that choice often enough, you won't just have willpower. You'll be willpower in motion. And nothing can stop a person like that. Willpower is not something that grows in isolation. It's not built in a vacuum. One of the most overlooked truths about cultivating inner strength is that your environment plays a massive role in either fueling your discipline or draining it. You could have the best intentions, the clearest goals, and even a strong sense of purpose. But if you're constantly surrounded by negativity, distraction, and low standards, your willpower will be under attack every single day. People often underestimate how deeply we're influenced by what we're exposed to. It's not just about who we spend time with. It's also about what we watch, what we listen to, and the spaces we live and work in. Everything around you is either reinforcing your goals or pulling you away from them. There's no neutral ground. Every influence in your life is either sharpening your focus or dulling your edge. If you want to develop unstoppable willpower, you've got to be deliberate about designing your environment to support your better self, not your weaker impulse. That means surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to grow, who hold you to a higher standard, who talk about ideas instead of gossip, who are more focused on progress than comfort. It means limiting your exposure to things that distract you, drain you, or cause you to doubt your path. Take a moment and think about this. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? What are the 5 types of media you consume most frequently? Are these people and inputs helping you become stronger, more focused, and more determined? Or are they making it harder to stay on track? Because your environment is either building your willpower or breaking it down, one day at a time. And it's not just about people. It's also about structure. Willpower isn't only a mindset. It's also a system. If you're constantly trying to fight off temptations that are right in front of you, your discipline is going to burn out faster. But if you set up your environment to make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder, you create momentum. For example, if you're trying to eat better, don't rely on raw willpower to avoid junk food. Remove it from your house. If you want to read more and scroll less, put the phone in another room and leave a book on your pillow. Small environmental tweaks like that may seem insignificant, but they are powerful because they reduce the number of decisions you have to make. And the fewer temptations you face, the more energy you preserve for the choices that really matter. It's like removing friction from your path. Suddenly the journey becomes smoother, and you're able to go farther with less effort. I once heard someone say, "You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." That's absolutely true. You could be incredibly motivated, but if your environment is full of distractions, disorganization, and discouragement, you'll find yourself slipping slowly. Then suddenly, but when your environment is set up to support your highest intentions, you naturally begin to rise. Not because you've suddenly become superhuman, but because you've removed the unnecessary resistance. So how do you create an environment that nurtures willpower? Start by taking inventory. Look around your physical space. Is it clean, organized, and set up for focus? Look at your schedule. Are your priorities reflected in how you spend your time? Look at your social circle. Are these people helping you grow, or are they holding you back? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're necessary, because until you change your environment, you're fighting an uphill battle with no end in sight. Now, don't misunderstand me. You don't have to cut off every friend who's not perfectly aligned with your goals, but you do have to protect your mental space. You have to limit negative influences and increase positive ones. You have to be around people who are going somewhere, because momentum is contagious. You have to immerse yourself in books, podcasts, and spaces that remind you of what's possible, that reinforce the idea that discipline is worth it, that effort pays off. In the end, cultivating willpower is about more than just inner strength. It's about creating an outer world that supports your inner world. When your environment and your values align, you won't have to force discipline. It'll feel more natural. The distractions won't disappear, but they'll lose their power, and your energy will go where it's meant to go, toward your goals, your growth, and the future you're building. That's the power of an intentional environment. It doesn't just support your willpower, it multiplies. Momentum is a powerful force. It's what carries you forward when motivation fades. It's what helps you keep going when things get hard. But here's what most people don't realize. Momentum isn't something you wait for. It's not something that magically appears when the stars align or when you feel inspired. Momentum is something you build. It's something you create through action, repetition, and consistency. Especially when you don't feel like it. That's when the groundwork is laid. That's when the seeds are planted. We live in a world obsessed with breakthroughs. Everyone's looking for that one big moment that changes everything. But willpower doesn't work that way. It doesn't arrive in a lightning bolt. It arrives quietly, through the small wins that most people overlook. The real strength is built in the early mornings when you show up, even though you're tired. It's built in the late nights, when you choose progress over comfort. It's built in the little choices, the ones nobody sees, the ones that don't seem to matter, but together, they add up. That's what creates momentum. The beautiful thing about momentum is that it multiplies your effort. It makes the next step easier because you've already taken the first one. Think of it like pushing a heavy car. At first, it barely moves. It's exhausting. You doubt yourself. You question whether it's even worth the effort. But you keep pushing. Inch by inch, it begins to roll. And before you know it, you're not pushing as hard. But the car is moving faster. That's momentum. It doesn't change the weight of the task. It just makes you stronger and more capable over time. Most people quit right before momentum kicks in. They do the hard part. Starting, and then they stop because the results don't come fast enough. But what they don't realize is that the first phase is supposed to be slow. It's supposed to feel like a grind. That's not a sign of failure. That's the process of building power. And the ones who stick with it, the ones who keep showing up and doing the work, they're the ones who break through. Not because they're special, but because they didn't stop when it was still hard. Momentum also brings something deeper. It brings belief. Every small win you create tells your mind, I can do this, and that belief is fuel. One workout turns into a week of workouts. One healthy meal becomes a shift in your habits. One disciplined decision at work leads to a higher standard in everything you do. That's how momentum spreads. It starts in one area of life and then touches everything else. Because once you start winning in one place, your confidence rises, your energy increases, and your identity starts to shift. That shift is key because it's not just about doing, it's about becoming. You're no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You're becoming a person who is. You're no longer pretending to have willpower. You're actually building it. And it happens naturally when momentum is on your side. You don't need to talk yourself into action as much. The resistance gets quieter. The excuses get weaker. You've got history behind you. You've got proof, and that proof becomes your foundation. It's important to protect that momentum once you have it. That doesn't mean being perfect. You're going to have off days. That's normal. But the key is not to let one bad day become two. Don't let a stumble become a spiral. Get back on track quickly. Recommit, re-engage. Because momentum is like a fire. It takes time to build, but once it's going, it only takes a little spark to keep it alive. And when you learn how to keep that fire burning, even in the smallest way, you'll find that discipline becomes a part of who you are. If you want to cultivate unstoppable willpower, stop waiting for the big moment. Start stacking small wins. Start doing the little things with full commitment. Trust the process. Momentum doesn't show up with a bang. It grows with consistency. One step leads to the next. One act of discipline makes the next one easier. And before you know it, you're not pushing anymore. You're being pulled forward by the force you created. Through effort, patience, and persistence. So if it feels hard right now, good. That means you're in the building phase. Keep going. Because once momentum is on your side, you'll feel a shift. And that shift, quiet, steady, powerful, is what turns ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. That's how willpower becomes unstoppable. Not through bursts of greatness, but through the steady rhythm of small victories, repeated with purpose. Failures, setbacks, and disappointments. These aren't roadblocks on the path to success. They are the path. One of the biggest lies we're told is that the presence of failure means something's gone wrong. That if you were really strong, if you were really disciplined, if you had real willpower, you wouldn't fall down. But let me tell you something straight. Even the strongest among us fall. Even the most disciplined lose their grip sometimes. The difference is they get back up again and again and again. When you're working to build unstoppable willpower, it's not about how perfect you can be. It's about how resilient you're willing to become. Because the truth is, willpower doesn't grow in moments of perfection. It grows in the comeback. It grows when you fall short. When the day slips away, when you make a choice you regret, and then you refuse to let that be the end of the story. You stand back up, you look yourself in the mirror, and you say, I'm not done. That's where power is built. See, most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they don't know how to respond to failure. One misstep, and they collapse. They get discouraged. They label themselves as someone who just doesn't have what it takes. But failure isn't final. It's feedback. It's a signal that something needs to be adjusted. Not that you need to give up. And when you begin to see failure as part of the process, as a necessary teacher rather than a personal judgment, you take away its power to stop you. Think about this. A child learning to walk doesn't fall once and give up. They stumble, fall, get bruised, maybe even cry, but they keep getting up. Why? Because the vision of walking is stronger than the pain of falling. Somewhere along the way, as we get older, we start fearing the fall more than we desire the outcome. That's when we lose our edge. That's when we stop pushing. But if you want to build real, lasting willpower, you've got to reignite that childlike persistence. The refusal to stay down. Every setback you face is an invitation to grow. Every moment you break a promise to yourself is a chance to learn what went wrong and how you'll respond differently next time. This isn't about shame. This is about strategy. It's about asking better questions. What triggered the lapse? What emotion were you avoiding? What pattern showed up again? When you use failure as data, it becomes fuel. And that fuel can drive you further than any motivational video or pep talk ever could. And let's talk about emotional resilience for a sec. Because willpower isn't just about action. It's about managing your internal world. Life will hit you with disappointment, criticism, uncertainty. People will let you down. Circumstances will shift. The plans you made will fall apart. If your willpower is only built on ideal conditions, it will crumble the first time things get messy. That's why you must learn to sit with discomfort, to face uncertainty, to stay calm when things go wrong. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The strongest people you know aren't the ones who've never failed. They're the ones who kept going when it would have been easier to stop. They've developed a habit of persistence, of showing up in the face of difficulty, of choosing growth over comfort, and you can do the same. But it requires a mindset shift from seeing struggle as a problem to seeing it as preparation, from seeing obstacles as detours to seeing them as training grounds. So the next time you miss a workout, break a promise, lose focus, or feel like quitting, remember this: the failure is not the end. The comeback is what counts. Willpower is not destroyed by a stumble. It's destroyed when you refuse to rise. But every time you return to your path, even if it's with shaky legs and a bruised ego, you're proving something powerful to yourself. You're saying, this setback does not define me. I decide what comes next. That decision is everything, because with each decision to recommit, to get back in the game, to act in alignment with your goals, you strengthen your will. You build a resilience that cannot be bought, borrowed, and over time, that resilience becomes your edge. It becomes the unshakable part of you. that doesn't just survive the storm, but grows stronger because of it. That's the truth about willpower. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about being unrelenting. You don't need to avoid every fall. You just need to rise one more time than you fall. That's how the strongest people are made. That's how unstoppable willpower is forged. Not in perfection, but in persistence. True willpower, real lasting, unstoppable willpower, isn't just about pushing harder. It's not about grinding yourself into the ground or fighting with every ounce of energy just to make it through the day. It's about something deeper, something more enduring, something more powerful. At the foundation of unshakable discipline is purpose, not vague intention, not temporary motivation, but a clear, compelling reason why you're doing what you're doing. When your purpose is clear, your path becomes clear. Obstacles that used to throw you off now just look like steps on the staircase. Distractions lose their grip. Excuses sound hollow. Why? Because purpose gives meaning to the struggle. It transforms effort into investment. It turns repetition into progress. Without it, you're just relying on brute force. And brute force alone will fail you when life gets tough. But when your purpose is driving you, even the hardest days have direction. Purpose is what gets you out of bed when the alarm feels too early. It's what pulls you back into the gym when your muscles ache. It's what keeps you locked into your goals when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, and when results are slow to come. Because purpose doesn't rely on applause. It doesn't need external validation. It comes from within. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. So the question becomes, what's your purpose? What is the deep, emotional reason behind your goals? Why does it matter that you succeed? Why must you follow through when it would be easier to quit? These are the questions that sharpen your focus and solidify your resolve. And your answer can't be shallow. To make more money or to lose weight isn't enough. You need to ask, why do I want more money? Maybe it's to provide for your family. Maybe it's to prove to yourself that you can be free. Maybe it's to break a generational cycle. Now we're getting somewhere. The stronger and more personal your purpose is, the more willpower you'll be able to tap into when things get tough. Because when your actions are connected to something meaningful, you're not just working on a task. You're honoring a mission. That's why people with strong purpose often seem to have endless energy. They don't. They're just being pulled by something greater than comfort. They're aligned, and alignment creates endurance. When you have clarity of purpose, you also gain clarity in decision-making. You stop chasing every new opportunity or trend. You stop wasting time on things that don't move you closer to your vision. That kind of focus conserves energy, and that conserved energy fuels willpower. You're no longer exhausted from indecision or spread thin by distractions. You're dialed in, you know what matters, and you act accordingly. But let's go a step further. Purpose isn't just a tool to help you do more. It's a path to help you become more. Every challenge you face, every sacrifice you make, every bit of discomfort you endure in pursuit of your purpose is shaping you. It's molding your character. It's stretching your capacity. That's the hidden gift of purpose. It doesn't just give your life direction. It gives you strength. And the more you live in alignment with your purpose, the more self-respect you build. You begin to see yourself as someone who honors their word, someone who follows through, someone who doesn't give in at the first sign of pressure. That identity shift is massive, because when you begin to see yourself as someone with discipline, with drive, with integrity, it becomes harder to act in ways that contradict that identity. That's how purpose reinforces willpower from the inside out. Now, purpose isn't something you find once and forget. It needs to be revisited, refined, and remembered often, because life will try to distract you. It will try to wear you down. You'll face temptations that look easier, paths that look quicker. But when your purpose is crystal clear, it acts like a compass. It keeps you centered. It brings you back to what truly matters. And in those moments of fatigue, of doubt, of temptation, that's when purpose becomes your most powerful weapon. So if you want to build willpower that lasts, not just for a day, not just for a week, but for life, build it on the foundation of purpose. Not hype, not pressure, but something real, something rooted in your values, something tied to your future. When your purpose becomes bigger than your pain, more important than your comfort, and stronger than your excuses, that's when your willpower becomes unstoppable. That's when you stop needing to be pushed, because you've learned how to be pulled by vision, pulled by meaning, pulled by purpose. And there's nothing more powerful than